As U.S.-China relations become increasingly tense, the chances of a U.S.-China decoupling has drawn increasing attention. Some economists believe that if the United States joins hands with its allies in decoupling from the CCP, it will cause a huge blow to China's economy, dropping its GDP growth to 1.6%. If so, all kinds of social platforms that were once placated by the economic growth of China will become more pressing. Bloomberg economists Tom Orlik and Bjorn van Roye wrote on September 3rd that such a decoupling would have a much larger impact on China than on the US, as China gains more from cross-border exchanges of ideas and innovation. Once the United States and China decouple, China's potential growth rate could fall to about 3.5% in 2030, from the current forecast of 4.5%, which assumes relationships remain broadly unchanged. The U.S. potential growth rate would be 1.4% in 2030, instead of the current forecast of 1.6%, the research estimates. China would face even more disastrous consequences if the U.S. can coordinate its key allies, such as Japan, South Korea, Germany, and France, to also decouple. In that case, China's growth potential could fall to 1.6% in 2030, and it'd be harder for Beijing to offset countervailing policies, according to the forecasts. The article believes that decoupling does not require breaks in all relations between the United States and its allies and the CCP. Trade in soybeans and textiles can continue because there's not much room for growth in productivity in the future. However, trade in cutting-edge technologies could cease. In this scenario, China's productivity growth will slow due to the stop in technology transfer, and capital spending could also be weaker. Financial commentator Wang Jian believes that the decoupling of the United States and China will deal a huge blow to the CCP. He said that in mainland China, some scholars believe that the GDP growth must be maintained by at least 6% per year, so as to conceal nearly 100 structural problems of the CCP, such as civil servants who do not contribute to pensions but still get money from pensions. It will cause the pension funds to be unable to make ends meet, becoming seriously overdrafted. Once the US and China decouple, China's GDP will drop sharply, and various problems covered by the CCP's rapid economic growth will suddenly appear, and the CCP's ruling foundation will no longer exist. Recently, the United States crackdown on the CCP has gradually intensified, from the trade war forcing the CCP to implement the first phase of the trade agreement, to increasing restrictions on mainland high-tech companies such as Huawei. It now puts pressure on Chinese company TikTok, which steals personal information from US users to sell to its business in the US. In addition, U.S. Secretary of State Pompeo recently said he was hopeful that Chinese Confucius Institute cultural centers on U.S. university campuses would all be shut down by the end of the year. President Trump promised to move companies in China back to the United States once he is re-elected, which will create 1 million jobs in the U.S. Washington also said it has declassified 6 Reagan-era security assurances given to Taiwan, a move analysts said appeared intended to show further support for Taiwan. The U.S. is further clarifying that Washington's One China policy is different from Chinese Communist Party's sovereignty claim over Taiwan. The United States is also requiring senior Chinese diplomats to get State Department approval before visiting U.S. university campuses or holding cultural events with more than 50 people outside mission grounds. Moreover, the U.S. government has clearly recognized the difference between the CCP and the Chinese people and has changed to call China the PRC, People's Republic of China. The leader of the CCP is no longer called the president, but the general secretary. Dissatisfied with the CCP's cover-up and handling of the CCP virus pandemic, Trump said in May that the entire U.S.-China relationship can be cut off. This is one of Trump's toughest comments on U.S.-China relations ever since he took office.
Australia, America, Japan, and India could formalize the quadrilateral strategic security ties at an in-person ministerial meeting in Delhi in the coming weeks. On August 31st, in an online seminar at the annual U.S.-India Strategic Partnership Forum, the Deputy Secretary of the U.S. State Department, Stephen Biegun, said the Indo-Pacific was lacking strong multilateral structures.
It is a reality that the Indo-Pacific region is actually lacking in strong multilateral structures. They don't have anything of the fortitude of NATO or the European Union. The strongest institutions in Asia oftentimes are not inclusive enough, and so it is certainly there is certainly an invitation there at some point to formalize a structure like this.
Biegun noted that the move, which in part is intended to counter Communist China's ambition in the Indo-Pacific region, will also play the role of allowing sustained regular communication between countries with shared interests and values. The Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, known colloquially as the Quad, was first formed in 2007 by Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. It has since met on a semi-regular basis to discuss regional economic issues and hold joint military drills like the Malabar exercises in India. Predominantly an informal strategic forum for the four liberal democracies over the past 13 years, Abe's goal of establishing the dialogue was to create an Asian arc of democracy, one that could be extended to include virtually all countries that sit on the periphery of China, including the states in Central Asia, Mongolia, the Korean Peninsula, and other countries in Southeast Asia. Re-energized in 2017 by the Trump administration, Begin said America views the Quad as a way to create a critical mass around the shared values and interests of those parties in a manner that attracts more countries in the Indo-Pacific, and even from around the world, to be working in a common cause or even ultimately to align in a more structured manner with them. In July, RAND senior defense analyst Derek Grossman noted, "For the first time in the Quad's history, the stars are aligning for a harder line on China, and the implications going forward could be significant." Grossman believes that the Quad now has a concrete resolve to deter China, as all members have been recently on the receiving end of Beijing's wolf warrior diplomacy. But he noted that the recent strengthening of the Quad would be viewed unfavorably by Beijing as the regime sees the Quad as a military alliance meant to contain and threaten China. Previously, China has placed pressure on Australia not to join with India and the United States, resulting in what some argue was Australia's withdrawal from the Quad under former Labour Prime Minister Kevin Rudd. However, after China's recent maneuvers of diplomatic coercion, Australia under the Morrison coalition government has pivoted its foreign policy towards defense capabilities in the Indo-Pacific, investing 270 billion Australian dollars, 196 billion USD, in a strategic update for Australia's defense forces. It has also signed a strategic partnership with India. At the launch of the Defence Force Strategic Update in July, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison said,
"We must be alert to the full range of current and future threats, including ones in which Australia's security and sovereignty may be tested."
The expected meeting in late September will be the first for Quad members since November 2019. At the time, Australia's Foreign Ministry released a statement saying that Quad countries were committed to continuing economic and security coordination to support regional stability and economic growth in the Indo-Pacific. They also agreed to enhance practical regional cooperation in fields such as maritime, counterterrorism, cyber, humanitarian assistance, and disaster relief. In China, facial recognition technology is used by the CCP as one of the surveillance methods to monitor citizens' daily lives. Facial pictures of Chinese citizens are being sold on a large scale on Chinese e-commerce platforms such as Taobao and Alibaba, and social media such as WeChat and QQ. This has caused great concern among people. Facial recognition is used thoroughly in China. For instance, it is used to clock in and out of work, to turn on cell phones and computers, to check into hotels, to pay expenses, and even to get toilet paper in the restrooms. Recently, Chinese media exposed a seller who uploaded 2 sets of facial pictures of people holding ID cards on WeChat and said 50 cents, 7 cents USD for one photo, no room for discounts. There is a total of 20,000 sets. Also in some QQ groups, detailed ID information and a facial picture of an individual can be bought for 3 yuan, 44 cents USD.
Facial recognition is needed for everything now, like taking public transportation and shopping online. Big data control is everywhere. Right now, the real name system is implemented on the internet. Information such as the identification card numbers and bank card numbers are collected. There is no privacy at all in China.
Insiders of the industry indicated that the serious problem of the leak of facial recognition data in China lies in the fact that not only are the facial photos leaked, citizen-sensitive information such as ID card numbers, bank card numbers, and cell phone numbers are also leaked. And the matching photo can be used to simulate a real person's behavior, like nodding, shaking, blinking, and talking. Individuals whose personal information was stolen are at risk for the rest of their lives because their names will be registered in most software for online money lending and fraudulent activities. Mr. Li, another Chinese human rights activist, revealed that he once came into contact with a person who sells personal information. He's extremely worried because this person sells all sorts of personal information.
There's a person who specializes in selling information. He can get everything and anything. You just tell him a random name and he will be able to find out everything about this person. For example, the members of the family. This is very terrible. Many people use this to commit crimes, to steal, to cheat, to commit fraud, anything. In China, people do anything for money.
Facial recognition technology is one of the surveillance methods used by the CCP to monitor the Chinese people. Recently, the CCP has upgraded facial recognition surveillance with the excuse of the pandemic. According to Reuters, many universities in China have purchased a large amount of epidemic control surveillance systems based on facial recognition to trace students' whereabouts and to govern their lives on campus, such as bathing and eating.
In the absence of protection of basic human rights, it is impossible for any human right, including the right to privacy, to be protected. They will find out where you live and arrest you for speaking out on the internet, but they don't arrest those people who are doing fraudulent activities online.
In October last year, many large Chinese companies that engage in the sales of facial recognition were sanctioned by the U.S. for their participation in the CCP's surveillance and persecution of the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. Both SenseTime, a Chinese artificial intelligence company, and Megvii, a Chinese software technology company, provide facial recognition service to the CCP's huge surveillance system.
Tens of thousands of ethnic Mongolians have signed a petition in protest against Beijing's new push to promote the country's official language, Mandarin, in Inner Mongolia, a move that some have described as cultural genocide. Last week, widespread anger began brewing in the northern Chinese region of Inner Mongolia after authorities announced they would introduce Mandarin-only teaching to local schools and replace Mongolian language textbooks with standardized Chinese versions for core courses that range from history, politics, to literature. Mandarin is the official dialect and language spoken by China's majority Han ethnicity. The new policy has sparked fear among ethnic Mongols in the region that it would gradually wipe out their culture and endanger their very identity. Over the past week, throngs of students, teachers, and parents have gathered at local school grounds, singing and chanting slogans in their native tongue while refusing to go back to the classroom, videos circulating on the internet show. According to the New York-based advocacy group the Southern Mongolian Human Rights Information Center, SMHRIC, in Inner Mongolia's capital Hawhot alone, around 20,000 have signed a petition against the new education guidelines. Videos released by the group show multiple folders of petition sheets filled with signatures, coupled with red fingerprints, a common method of identification in China. Ungabatu Togochog, director of SMHRIC, estimates that hundreds of thousands of ethnic Mongols have signed the petition, noting that they have seen 2,700 signatures from a small rural remote community alone. He said that the number of students who have taken part in the school strike is likely around 300,000. He told the Epoch Times, considering the total mobilization of the entire southern Mongolian society, it is safe to say that almost the entire southern Mongolian population has taken part of this massive non-violent civil disobedience movement in one form or another. Latest government data from 2010 to 2015 indicates that around 4.2 to 4.3 million ethnic Mongols live in the region, making up roughly 17.1% of the population. The Chinese regime reacted swiftly to the strikes by mobilizing local police and detaining activists. In one district of Tomliao City alone, nearly 140 ethnic Mongols have been accused of picking quarrels and provoking troubles, a common charge used on political dissidents. Their headshots, apparently captured by zoomed-in surveillance footage, were posted on government websites, which offered monetary rewards for their capture. Government and school notices seen by the Epoch Times show that ethnic Mongolian government workers in multiple regions were told to send their kids back to schools and were threatened with severe disciplinary action if they did not comply. From August 29th to September 2nd, the regime's national police chief Zhao Ke-zhi toured around various police bureaus in Inner Mongolia. In a speech that appears to forebode a harsh crackdown, he told local police to follow the Chinese Communist Party's leadership no matter what circumstances and take strict measures to prevent terrorism. He said they must fight the tough battle ahead with an iron grip. Two parents, a teacher and her husband, have reportedly committed suicide, according to Bitter Winter, an online magazine on religious freedom and human rights in China. Togochog put the current death toll at 4. Togochog said a massive manhunt and mass arrests are on the way, but the southern Mongolians are determined to risk their life to face all the challenges ahead. State-owned news outlets have posted photos showing children in traditional Mongolian gown or school uniforms reading or playing in various Hawhot primary schools, supposedly on their first day back from summer break. However, locals called such scenes staged. They said authorities have borrowed Han students as actors. Suda, alias, from the region's eastern tip Shilingo League, told the Epoch Times, these kids would perform from one place to another, She noted that some of the children were dressed in clothes meant for performances rather than daily attire. She added, many Mongolian schools in Inner Mongolia are empty since the kids are not back. Su Da said while Chinese officials said the new policy would not affect Mongolian language teaching, there have been major changes in the new textbooks that made the promises ring hollow. She said a popular folk verse professing pride in their culture and language, which many ethnic Mongol youths could recite by heart, has been removed from textbooks. Also gone were songs praising their historical heroes, which have been replaced with Chinese ballads. The teachers were instructed to talk to each parent to get the children back to school. She said, there's been endless calls and endless text messages. The parents just won't accept it. A teacher from Xinlingo League who spoke on condition of anonymity said that a local ethnic Mongolian police officer has been suspended for opposing the policy. Disciplinary officials have also sought out teachers from their school one by one for a talk. Privately, some have prepared for possible dismissal. We are of now one heart, parents, students, teachers, and Mongols in all social sectors. We have never been so united.